This is Healthcare Uprising. We are here to shine a light on the innovators implementing positive change in American healthcare and the patient experience stories, good and bad, that can help others navigate the sometimes overwhelmingly complex American healthcare system. Welcome to the Uprising. We are not doctors and we don't play one on TV. If you need medical advice, consult with your physician or a healthcare professional. All right. Hello, health heads. Welcome and thank you for checking in to this dose of the Healthcare Uprising. I'm your producer in the back, Jeremy Carr, here with your host in the front row, Heather Pierce. So what's on our agenda for today, Heather?
Well, today we're talking with Tanya. I'm not even going to try to say her last name because I mess it up every time, but she's like my second cousin. Yeah, I get my own family members on here, but she's a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, and a many, many, many times caretaker of her loved ones, including her father, her mother, and her brother. On top of all that, she has managed to recently retire from a long and successful career, all while caring for these folks that I just named off, in some way, shape, or form at different times, for different length of times, and different scenarios. So Tanya's really, really done it all. So when I say caretakers are superheroes without capes, she is a basically real life example of that. She is a caretaking and disability understanding guru and just an all around great person. I'm lucky enough to call family. Like I said, she's my second cousin. Hey, thanks to like ancestry.com and all those really crazy gene tests that we actually found each other.
The family tree stuff people can do now is crazy, isn't it?
It is pretty wild. So anyhow, so that's Tanya, and I'm really excited that she is talking with us today about her multi-pronged caretaking story.
Yeah, really, really great story from this one. From a production side, do just want to warn everybody out there that Tanya is in Western Massachusetts. She didn't have the best internet. The audio's a little bit rough, but the conversation's totally worth it. Do our best with it for you. So hope you enjoy listening. So without further ado, here is our interview with Tanya, the caregiver.
Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, let's jump right into it. Tanya, you are a caregiving guru. I'm giving you that. I'm giving you that title.
Caregiving.
There might be a t-shirt involved.
It's an honorary degree.
Exactly. So, as part of our focus, our series that is focused on caregiving and long-term care, your story and your experiences are going to be really, I think, important in terms of the very many experiences that you have. And so would love just to start off with hearing about what your caregiving kind of situations have been, situations plural, since you have a couple, who you've taken care of, kind of what the scenarios are, and like what your role has been, and just kind of set this up and give us an idea of why you are a caregiving guru, whether you want that award or not.
Sure, not a problem. So I started caregiving 20 years ago to my husband, who was 47 at the time when he suffered a massive stroke. He spent 8 weeks in the hospital and then came home, and I basically didn't know what to do with him. He was completely dependent on me for everything, from getting him in and out of his wheelchair to getting him bathed every day, dressed, fed, you name it. That was my life for a long time, until one day I just woke up. I was so exhausted. I said, "You're on your own. I can't do this anymore. I will help you, but I can't do this for you anymore." So he learned how to walk again and drive and all that good stuff, but he still needed me to be around in case he needed something that he couldn't access. So that was my first foray into caregiving, and it's ongoing to this day, because unfortunately he started to digress. His condition had improved for a while, but now he's got balance issues. He's found that he's a little more in need like he was initially. So it's kind of ongoing. The second one was my father. My father was 90 years old and he fell one day, broke his hip, of course. And they always say that if you're that old and you break your hip, it's basically the kiss of death. And unfortunately, it was. He was in the hospital for, oh my gosh, I want to say a month. Then from there, he moved into a caregiving facility for rehab and to get him back walking. And they were going through the motions doing that. I was doing everything because my mother just went to pieces. She honestly couldn't do anything about it. She couldn't contact Social Security. She couldn't contact the Marine Corps for benefits, nothing. So it all fell on me being the oldest.
And how old was she at the time?
My mom was 88 at the time. So my
She
dad
was
was
okay.
90 and my mom was 88. So my dad went from one facility to another after his Medi Social Security, Medicare was used up because a lot of people don't know this, but Medicare will only pay for 90 days, okay, or 90 or 100 days. So
In the
they basically
facility
in a
or
facility
okay.
and then you have to start paying yourself.
Hmm.
So they basically, I mean, literally kicked him out. So I had to scramble and find another place to put him, which I was able to, which is right up the street from us. Um, his condition got worse. He was a lot sicker than we knew. But in the meantime, I was running interference with the VA, with Medicare, you name it. I was having to be the middleman. We got him settled. He had to have his leg amputated. He never got over that. And unfortunately, he passed away about 4 months after they moved him there. The interim, my mother got pneumonia. She couldn't take care of herself. So I was going from my house with my husband and my job to my mother's house to make sure actually, I had to move in with her for 2 weeks because she couldn't be left alone. Going to visit my father on a daily basis. That was not fun, but it worked out okay because I ended up getting my brother and his wife to move in with her to take care of her and make sure she was okay, um, which did not make her happy. Um, in the interim, while my father was at the care facility, he had been there about 2 weeks, and my brother made an appearance. He had suffered an aortic dissection, and they found him on the stairs in his house that he was living in. He had mental issues. I had been bringing him groceries, doing his laundry, kind of taking care of him on the fly up to that point. He decided to make me his proxy, his healthcare proxy, and his power of attorney. So I had to make all the arrangements on getting him settled and in there, which again was interesting because he had the mental issues and was being
And
seen
your
by
mom, right?
my mom. Not yet, not
No,
yet,
no,
but I
you
was still
you're
caring for
also
her.
a mother. You also
Oh,
had a
yes,
child
yes.
or
Yeah, oh,
well still
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah. And my
on top of
husband
this.
and a full-time job.
Oh my
So
God.
that was crazy.
Yeah.
Then after my father passed away, my mother moved in with us, got her all set up here. She lived with us for 2 years before she passed away. She was in the hospital literally 6 times a year. And each time she would come out, she was a little bit worse off. This happened at COVID. So she was in the hospital. I was able to see her right before Thanksgiving. She was ready to move to a rehab facility, but what we didn't know, as with my father, she was a lot sicker than she let on. So she ended up going to a skilled nursing facility where my brother was, right up the street from us, just to get her endurance, her balance, and everything back. And like I said, she was a lot sicker than any of us knew, and she passed away right before Christmas. So I lost my dad the day after Christmas. I lost my mom 12 days before Christmas. So
The
December's not a real good month.
the following year, was it a year later or what's the or
It was actually 3 years after my father passed away.
So
So my
three
dad
years.
passed away in December of 2017. My mom passed away in December of 2020.
Mm,
So my brother's still there and is doing, okay. He's still confined to a wheelchair. I go see him twice a week. He came over here for Christmas. Um, he's confined to a wheelchair, so he can't really get around very well. But yeah, that's so I've had my husband, my mother, my
Wow.
father, and my brother, four people that
wow.
I've provided care for in some way or another, either having them here at my home, going to their home and caring for them, or going back and forth from my house to a facility.
So
So
yeah,
Wow.
you and caregiver guru. That's
Yeah.
I'm still
insane.
caregiving. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Well,
It's
and
tough.
kind of all for different reasons. Like you're dealing with them all on different levels too, which just oof. It's not like,
Yeah.
being a nurse where everybody has the same problem that you're dealing with, you know what
No,
I
it
mean?
was all different. It was all different. But of course, power of attorney and healthcare proxy all fell on me with everybody. So I was like going, you don't want me doing this because I'm just going to say turn everything off.
Mm,
If anything happens, you guys, that's it. I can't keep doing this forever.
that
But
is wild.
it is. It's been a
And did you
wild
not
time.
have any siblings that could help out, or was it just sometimes you're just the one that's
Um,
gets to do it all?
my siblings, my two siblings are pretty not helpful. I don't want to use the term useless, but that's basically what it boils down to. Um, as I said, the one moved in with her, and that was a disaster.
Mm,
Um, but none of them would help out with anything. When my mom sold her house, I did it all by myself, from
hmm.
cleaning it to the estate sale to doing all the paperwork to making all the repairs, the whole 9 yards. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's that's a lot to handle. I get it too. I've been in that position too where I don't know, just sometimes you're just so capable that you're like, I can handle this, right? Even though it's a lot to balance, obviously.
Yeah, even though you're saying, why did I volunteer for this?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. Well, so you've got four different scenarios you've dealt with. Some, are continuing. Although I think you said your husband though, he at least, I mean, he doesn't need like a 24/7 support, right?
No, no, he's actually fine, but he can't cook meals.
Sure. Yeah.
He can drive, which makes me nervous, but he doesn't go out all that often, and he usually just goes from our house to the hospital, which is about 6 miles away, or from our house to the doctor, which is literally around the corner. So um, he's can get around, but like if we were to go, say, out for dinner, we have his wheelchair that we put in the back of the car, and then we take it and I get the wheelchair out and I get him in it and I push him around. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And where you live in Massachusetts, would you say that's pretty rural, a rural area?
Yes, it's very rural.
Yeah. You said
Yeah,
6 miles to the hospital. I thought, well, and I know a little bit about that area. So has that in terms of like resources that you need for your various caregiving roles, would you say that's proven to be more difficult? Like, is there less kind of available resources in your
um,
area, or how do you deal with that?
well, most of the stuff I went outside of the network here in this area just because, and it wasn't for lack of resources. It was just before because I had asked, they gave me a little bit of information at the hospital, but I felt that there was more. And the Veterans Administration was absolutely wonderful in helping with my father. I can't say enough about it. I know there are horror stories out there. I've heard really negative things about it, but the one here in Western Massachusetts was phenomenal. They helped me tremendously. Um, I had a very strong support network at work. Um, Not necessarily the company itself, but the individuals that worked in the disability insurance area with me. They were so helpful. I had an attorney, I had the head of claims, I had that that support at my fingertips, and they gave me a lot of hints for, dealing with Social Security and my husband's disability company. Um, so I was able to get a lot of information that I needed just from digging on my own. Plus, I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I was always thinking to myself, okay, that can't be all there is. I'm going to find more, and I did. I became very savvy using Google and learned certain terms to put in so I could find the resources that I was looking for. They do, though. I want to be fair to the hospital that's here in town. They do have a good network. It's expanded over the past 20 years. I mean, when you think about it, my husband spent, like I said, 8 weeks in the hospital doing rehab. That would never happen today.
Hmm.
He'd have been out of there in a week.
Right.
Um, but back then, I had the physical therapy team that was really helpful, that would come to the house and say, okay, you need to change this, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is fine. Um, the social worker was very helpful. Um, that they were very, very good. And the stroke support group there really helped my husband. He's been a member of it for 20 years now, and he just started doing the one in Springfield at Bay State Hospital. So that's been a real good resource. And he has kind of taken some of the things I've had happen to me to these stroke group meetings, which have been very helpful to a lot of people. So,
You're kind of already starting to speak to some of the things I wanted to cover, which was really highlighting some of the most like stand out aspects, people, things, programs that you might have encountered, used, what have you, like the stroke support group, for example. And obviously, you've been multiple different scenarios, very different needs, time frames of need, obviously short versus long term, right? Like your brother, for example, your husband. Um, and over quite a bit of span of time, right? So
20
back in the
years.
day, 20, right? 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
20.
Um, I mean, you must have seen some new things come up over time and maybe even more so in the last couple of years. I don't know. I'm making assumptions
Yeah.
based on kind of the innovation that we are seeing in the healthcare space. Can you talk about some of that stuff? And it could just be a person. I know, like a social worker, not necessarily healthcare innovation, but like let's give them a round of applause, if that's the case. But are there other things that you've encountered or seen that you can talk about and tell us how amazing they've been for you
Yeah.
all?
So, the nurses out at the hospital, the ones that my husband had were phenomenal. But what they did is they really liked him so much that the head of the nursing in the stroke area asked if he would take part in their monthly trainings, in their, I think it was quarterly training sessions or biannual. I can't remember what it was, but he actually used to do like a dog and pony show with a presentation about, how the stroke affected him. Because as he would say, you know, nobody who ever had a stroke had to stay in the hospital after that stroke. My husband's a tall man. He's over 6'3". He's crammed into this tiny little bed, and they all come in and say, "Oh, are you comfortable?" And he'd be, "Oh, I'm like squished up." So they finally, I think it was maybe 2, 3 weeks into it, they finally got around to getting a longer bed in for him, which was interesting. They fit it in the room. But so that was one way, he talked about things that nurses needed to be aware of when dealing with stroke patients. Um, Doctors, I don't want to be trash talking doctors, because I think when you have a good one, you've got a really good one, and you've hit the jackpot. But I know that when my father was hospitalized, I did battle with the doctors. I was talking to my dad one day. He was in the hospital. This is before he went in for what ended up he ended up passing away from, but he'd had a stroke. He was talking to me, and all of a sudden his words started slurring. So I called the nurse and I said, my father's having a stroke. So the nurse gets on, she does the stroke assessment test real quick, down and dirty. And she goes, oh my God, he is. So she gets the doctor, and the doctor comes in and he said, he's not having a stroke. I said, trust me, I know he's having a stroke. We stood there and argued for a good 10 minutes. And I said, okay, I'm not leaving here until you give my father an MRI. And they said, well, we can't do that. I said, no, you're going to do it because I'm not leaving until you do it. So they did it. He came in and apologized to me because he says, you can see he's got a brain bleed right here. So one of the things I learned was you have to speak up for not only yourself, but you have to speak up for the person that you're there for. You have to advocate for them. It's if you don't, you're going to get screwed big time, and it's going to have a horrible effect on the person that you're trying to care for. Um, so that was another thing.
Yeah,
Just
self-advocacy or advocating for your loved one is definitely
absolutely,
important. And pushing, right? Sometimes you have to really get
yeah.
pissed.
Oh, well,
I
yeah.
mean,
I think the doctor knew that I was not kidding because I just stood there like this. I said, I'm not leaving until you do an MRI. And you could see he's just going, oh, crap. What am I going to do? I guess we got to give him an MRI. But because they did, they were able to treat him for the stroke.
imagine if you didn't push for that,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
It, it
Exactly.
it's an unfortunate philosophy in American healthcare from that side that if you don't make it their problem, it's not your problem isn't their problem. You have to make your
Exactly.
problem their problem in order for them to do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's I do like that you have a good VA story though, because you do hear horror
Oh,
stories
yeah.
about the VA all the time. It's good to hear a positive turn for them.
Can you talk
They
maybe a little bit more specifically about that too?
So they were amazing. I was at my wit's end when my father was, like I said, kicked out of the facility because it was private pay or you had to have a long-term care policy. So it was private pay facility. So I was just like, what the hell? So, anyways, I scrambled around and I thought I'll call the VA and see if anybody there can help me. Number one, it wasn't my first dance with them. They had always picked up the phone and talked to me when I had somebody come in to be a companion for my dad a couple hours a week. They were wonderful and hooking me up immediately. So when I called and told them the situation, I said, they've kicked him out. I said, I don't know what to do with him, but he needs 24-hour care. Told them what was going on, and they said, okay. So they pulled up his file. He was in the system. That's important. They need to be in the system and have been to that VA before. They said, oh my gosh, your father served in 3 wars. He was combat frontline in every war. They said, he qualifies for a lot. So they said, what we can do is we partner with 3 long-term care facilities, skilled nursing facilities in your area. And they named them off. And I said, Craneville Place, that's the one where my brother is. It's close by. Please get him in there. So there was a waiting list. I think he waited 2 days and there was an opening. So he got in right away. What they did was because they have this partnership, they picked up the tab for his entire stay. It did not cost my mom 1 penny. Um, the only drawback, if you want to use the term drawback to it, is that I can't think of what word it is, but he becomes the property of the VA. So if he needs to say see a doctor, they've got to take him to the doctor and they see him at the facility. He didn't have to. So, we were very lucky in that aspect. But they got him into the nursing home, and for 4 months they picked up the tab, which was wonderful. And they would feel bad. They genuinely felt bad if there was nothing they could do. I remember the woman that I talked to because I was trying to get extra hours. This was a couple of years before, a couple of years extra for my father to have a companion come to the house, 3 hours. She was literally crying, saying that they had cut off funding and they couldn't give any more than 6 hours. And I thought, oh my God, don't cry. I said, we'll make do. Don't worry about it. But, they picked up the phone every time I called. If they didn't pick up the phone, they returned my call that same day. They were responsive. They were helpful. They were just amazing people. So I have
Is
no
that
complaints.
the person you were talking about, this com companion? Like the word will come to me. The companion, is that like respite or is it truly just
No,
like a a
he
person
was
to
just, yeah. So about a year and a half before my father fell, my mom was working still, and she would want somebody there for my father because he was a little woozy on his feet. He was a little wobbly, and she didn't want him being left alone. Even though for the 3 hours she was gone, he would sit in a chair and not move for 3 hours. He had his Turner Classic Movies for the remote in one hand, and he had his book. He was very happy. But they found a lovely man who was also a veteran who would come and spend 6 hours with my father during the week. I think it was 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. Could do it any way you wanted. He could do 6 hours one day or 5 hours one day and 1 hour another, just whatever my dad wanted. He was a really good guy. He would take my dad shopping. He would help him if he needed help in the shower. He would take my dad for walks up and down their driveway or up and down their road. And I say road because they did not live on a street, they lived on a road. But he was really, really good. We ended up getting hospice care for my dad, which that was a tough call to make. But, as they say, it's not necessarily the end of the road. It's someone to help make them feel better and keep them comfortable. Although my dad didn't want any part of it. He was not happy being in the facility. All he wanted to do was come home, but we just couldn't. He needed 24-hour care.
Was the hospice care in the facility or at home?
It was in the facility. But
Okay,
what they
gotcha.
also did was they kept contacting my mother um, and saying, we thought after my father passed away, the hospice care would continue to call my mom to make sure she was okay, see if there was anything that needed to be done, if she needed help with anything. Plus, they have grief grief groups. Um,
Like counseling or whatever.
yes, whatever
Mhm.
she needed. They were really terrific. They were really terrific.
And that was all through the VA?
Um,
Or was that through the
that
facility?
was through the facility. They
Okay.
worked with yeah, yeah, that was through the
Okay.
facility.
So the VA gets you the facility, and then the facility supplies a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
And
the VA is paying for it,
yes,
But the
everything.
VA
yes,
pays for everything.
Yeah.
That's
yep.
that's great. That's
It's
great.
not cheap. Nursing,
I'm sure.
skilled
Yeah.
nursing facilities, they'll cost you easy 10 grand a month.
Wow.
Easy. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I'm very lucky that I have a long-term care policy that will more than cover um, the majority of care when, and I say when because it's not going to be an if, it's when I end up having to have assistance. So, yeah.
so with literally with all of the balls in the air that you have been juggling
Mhm.
across the various circumstances that you've had, like what do you wish looking back or maybe even right now because you're still technically a caregiver for your husband to a degree.
Yep.
Um, what do you wish you had? Like what kind of tool or technology or other support to like help manage all of this? And the reason I ask is because there are a lot of startups that are coming out with these like navigation platforms, like care navigators, people that kind of help folks like you in these sorts of circumstances um, manage the lives of your loved ones who depend on you. I, I don't know if
Um,
you've used one either. Maybe you have.
I used what was that? A home for mom. I think it is a home for mom, a place for mom to help me.
Yes. Yep.
Boy, they called. As soon as I clicked on that link, I had a phone call waiting for
Mm-hmm.
me, from them.
Yep.
They were very helpful. Um, I
A
think
place for
though,
mom. That's
a
what it's
place
called.
from, yeah,
Yes. I remember calling them for my grandmother when we needed to
yes,
put her in a nursing facility. Yeah.
yeah, they're very nice and they were very, very helpful. I think if there was like a package that they could give you, the hospital tried and they fell kind of short, but an online tool that had everything you needed to know from here's what you can expect to here are some resources for each step of the way and direct links. Like when my husband started walking again, I thought, oh, great, I got to find a cane for him. Nobody told me the United Cerebral Palsy here in town. You can go there and get any equipment you want free of charge. They do
Oh, wow.
not charge it, and you can keep it as long as you need it. So, needless to say, every year we make nice donations to the United Cerebral Palsy.
Yeah.
But the other thing is I called them the first time my brother came because him being wheelchair bound. I thought, crap, how are we going to get him in the house? They have an 8-foot ramp. And they said, just keep it as long as you need it. No charge. You just fill out the paperwork. You keep it as long as you need it.
Like
So
a
every time
temporary
he comes,
ramp that you can just kind
yeah,
of set up yourself. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, I kind of need help sometimes, but I did it myself this past Christmas. Yay me. But yeah, so, just saying, here's a resource for this. Here's a resource for that. Skilled nursing facilities. Here's what they include. And by the way, Social Security is not going to pay for it. Neither's Medicare. They're only going to pay for $100, 190 or 100 days. I forget which it is. In a skilled nursing facility, and then you're on your own. And it's graded too, as far as what the percentage of what they'll pay. Um,
So there's no handbook, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's no handbook. There's,
Yeah.
I mean, looking back on it, like I said, I was digging on my own just
Mhm.
because I didn't know. Like I said, nobody told me, just call the United Cerebral Palsy. And that came from a woman that I was working with because her son is special needs and she volunteered for them. So she says, give them a call. If they've got it, you can take, they even have things like iPads. I'm going, are you kidding me? Wonderful people, super helpful. Like I
And
said, oh, go ahead.
it's, I mean, they got cerebral palsy in the name, but you don't have to have cerebral palsy for them to help you then. It's just anyone who actually is in need of the equipment can contact them.
Exactly. I
Hmm.
remember
That's
after
a
my dad
wonderful
passed
piece of
away.
knowledge
Yes,
right
it
there.
is.
Yeah, after my dad passed away, he had this wonderful walker with handbrakes on it and everything. And so I donated it to United Cerebral Palsy along with a couple other things that they had used. And they're like going, oh my God, we haven't seen one of these in so long. We need this. We need this. So, it was nice to know you were providing them with things that they could use and lend to other people for as long as they needed it. My husband still has the cane
Oh,
that we've
wow.
had for
Mm.
20 years. And I've had the ramp for 7 years with my brother. So, yeah.
Oh, so you haven't
Well,
even given it back. You still have it.
No,
I
You
mean,
he
you
uses a
when you don't
lot.
need it
He's
anymore, right?
yeah.
That's kind of the concept. You
exactly,
use it till you don't need it anymore.
Hmm.
exactly, exactly. So, yeah, a booklet just giving you resources because, I exhausted myself during doing searches for,
Mhm.
oh God, okay, what am I going to do if I need to take a break? Who can I
Mhm.
call? And they have all these wonderful at home companion things. People that'll come over for an hour, 2 hours, overnight, whatever you need for. I didn't know who to call, so I was asking my neighbor who used to be an at home care nurse. So,
And there just isn't one pathway, right? Like everybody's experience is different. You've got different kinds of coverage. You might have disability, you might not. You might have long-term care, you might not. You might have Medicare, you might have Medicaid. It's like VA. So it's like choose your own adventure, right? Like where are we going?
exactly,
And
exactly.
there just isn't, it almost feels like if this, then this, right? And you could go in three different directions,
Yeah, you
technically
could do
based
a
on who you are.
diagram. You could do a diagram. What are they? The
Yeah.
Venn diagrams for it, if yes, go here. If no,
Yeah.
go here. Yeah. Um, yeah, it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge.
I think that's why these like care navigation platforms are that are with technology, right? Like as we progress in, the universe of humans, right? And human intelligence, it's these I think these like care navigations, these care support platforms that are coming up on the market more and more. I can name off a couple off the top of my head. Hopefully we'll be bringing some of them on the show. They're hugely useful because you don't have to spend that time, right? Instead, you've got like your expert on the other end of the line or texting or chatting or however it is that you're engaging with them to help to tell you, hey, did you know you can go to UCP and get, durable medical equipment, for
Oh, yeah,
your husband. So I'm hoping that's going to change, right? And it's going to become more and more widely available too. So
that would be awesome. That would be
You
so awesome.
a point that comes to mind for me though, looking at it from the outside, you did say that it was kind of because of where you are that you had access to, that region's offerings. It's going to be different depending on where you go, though, right? Like, not everywhere is the VA going to be so helpful, and not everywhere has a
Exactly.
UCP center, and and based on the coverages you have, but it's also based on where you're at, right? Like, I mean, would it be feasible in your guys' mind that you could make a universal list for this, or would it have to be adjusted to every city kind of thing?
adjusted.
Yeah.
It would definitely have
There's
to
the
be
challenge,
adjusted.
right? Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
challenge. You would have to make it a local thing for every city.
Mm, right.
Yeah,
Huh?
it's I mean we're small here, so everything's really close, but I would imagine in a city like, say, Phoenix, for
Hmm.
example, you might have more, but it might be more spread out, and some might be better than others. And there would be a problem too, because I know you have to be careful about, at least here, you had to be careful about who the hospital would say you can go to for skilled nursing.
Right.
Um, they would
That
say, well, we
pesky
have
network problem.
Yeah.
exactly. Well, we have to list these three because they're affiliated with our hospital. These three aren't. And I'm just going,
Mhm.
well, what if these three are crappy? Well,
You're
yeah.
stuck,
And
right?
they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's that's insurance driven, unfortunately. Insurance networks driving
really
those choices. So yeah,
insurance companies.
that's a whole other, we aren't going to talk about that here.
Oh, are we not doing that
No,
today?
not today.
Maybe another episode. Yeah, that's a whole nother
Yeah, that's
networks.
a different can of worms to get into.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it's a
it
big
really
can.
is. Did your employer, so you've been employed, or well, you recently retired,
Hi,
congratulations.
thank you.
Did you ever have any great benefits through your employer that helped you with any of this? I mean, outside of them being, understanding and having some
Right.
flexibility, like you had mentioned earlier.
Um, Not my company specifically. As I said, it was more the people, the individuals that I talked to, because I had made friends with our attorney and her husband, who was the vice president of claims. I had this package of paperwork to fill out for my husband's disability benefits as well as his, this is another thing along those lines, but long-term care. And I'm just like, I didn't know what to do with it. I was just in this state. And they said, okay, sit down. We're going to go through this with you. We'll check it. We'll make sure everything's right so you don't have to keep doing this. So it was the people at my company that really, really did a good job. I have a great long-term care policy through my company. It was one of the individual policies that they offered us. And so I'm set. Um, my husband, on the other hand, had just started working at a new company, maybe 6 months into having a stroke. So when I called them to let them know, I talked to the person in HR and she says, okay, she says, I'm sending you a package today. You need to fill it out and get it back to me as soon as possible. And I'm like, Oh, okay, more paperwork, whatever. I said, don't worry, he's going to use up all his sick time and his vacation time. So he'll be set for at least a month there. Then he's going to switch over to short-term disability, and then we'll take it from there to see what happens. She was wonderful. She was really, really terrific. So I get the package and I'm looking at it, and it's for long-term care policy. And I thought, he just had a stroke. I mean, I work for long-term care, and I'm going, he's not going to get, he's going to get rejected for this. So I called her and she said, no, 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 it's guaranteed issue. She says, fill it out and get it back to me. It's guaranteed issue. I said, even though? She goes, even though. So I went ahead, I filled it out. So he's got that in place. So both of us have private care insurance for long-term care, like I said, when we need it, not if, but when we need it. Um, Mine is an indemnity, which will pay forever. David's is
Hmm.
limited to, I think, 5 years, but he's got a considerable amount of money in there. So I'll just have to make sure I divorce him before that works out. Doesn't tap into my house and everything. Yeah, just kidding.
Well, I mean, honestly though, I've heard people make decisions
Do
like
it.
that, either to get married, to not get married,
Mhm.
to get divorced, like
Divorce.
just to be able to take care
Yeah.
of their
you,
families,
you
which
can't
Yeah.
is
you can't win if you don't play the game. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, as
exactly.
it is, my brother, who's in the nursing home, he's on Mass Health and Medicaid. That pays for him, but his assets can't be more than $2,000. So
Hmm.
his additional money from that check every month adds up, and it's up to me to monitor it to make
Okay.
sure that it's under that $2,000 mark, which is a challenge sometimes because he doesn't want anything or need anything. So what I do is I buy funeral policies for him. So I've got like $4,000 worth of funeral expenses for him from that money, which just means when he passes, I just say, Dairy Funeral Homes, take care of this. Here's the numbers of the policies that he's got in place, and it'll be paid for. So,
Hmm.
um,
I'm familiar with this because I'm the legal guardian of my oldest niece, Shannon, who is in a group home in New Jersey. And they will tell me, hey, she's got an extra $800 or whatever. It's rare that there's money left in her account because they take them on like trips and stuff like that. And so the extra money will go to those things. But I remembered they called me about 2 years ago. Hey, we've got like an extra like $1,800 that's racked up. And let's put it towards funeral costs. And yeah, ultimately, it didn't end up doing that. But like, yeah, that's what happens though, is that you can't go over that threshold or they're gonna,
or
yeah.
the government takes it and they tax front
Exactly.
it, everything else.
They
So
will. Yeah, so you have to spend it. Um,
it's not right. It's just not. We really need to do something about our long-term care for people because it's going to grow. It's a growing population because we're
mhm.
living longer.
Yeah.
Our
And
parts are
there's
just wearing out.
and we're you know suddenly seeing a shrinkage of population. The next generation has less people in it, which makes, a heavier top end with the older people that need to be taken care of. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, we need to start facing our problems or they're going to become much bigger,
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
As I
bigger.
always tell Jacob, my son, he's an only child, and I tell him, I said, you're not going to have to worry about dad, or I just make sure we go someplace nice. I said, here's the phone numbers you call. This kicks my long-term care and this kicks your father's. Just give them a call and deal with them directly. So, um,
Yeah. And you've worked you've worked in this world, right?
mhm.
And obviously you've had to make a lot of decisions for a lot of people. And just to think how resourceful and actually like just kind of the knowledge that you have, right? And I think about this even for me, I've worked in the healthcare industry for 24 years. I know a lot. Like I can navigate this world. I know where to find the answers, probably know a lawyer, right? Like you did. Um, but there's a lot of people who do not have
They
access
don't.
to this information. I can't imagine how overwhelming that would be for somebody. Like if we think it's hard,
Oh yeah.
I can't even imagine what somebody like you, Jeremy,
Yeah.
would be like, you'd be like, I have no idea. You don't even know where to
Yeah.
start.
Wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah.
You don't know where to start. So, yeah, ask for help. That's the biggest piece of advice I can
Well,
give is ask for help. It's
Hmm.
out there. There are resources for you. You just have to ask.
Yeah.
Um,
actually, I will footnote that by now I do know where to start. I hit up a place for mom in the UCP.
Yeah.
there you
See,
go.
this is why we had to start a podcast. This is what the Uprising's doing.
Yeah.
We're
Absolutely.
gonna have to put all these places in the show notes as well. Like find some links for these places for people.
Absolutely. We get out of all the conversations that we have with everybody so far as just this incredible list of resources for people to use for whatever this, situation is. So we definitely have a lot. We have a growing list for long-term care, caregiving kind of related. So we'll definitely add those to the show notes.
We can start building that all in one place we were talking about, except we're gonna need people from every location to let us know what's good there
Right.
and
Yeah.
start compiling that on, we do still have to build our website. Maybe that's one of our pages.
Yep, it's coming. Um, and Tanya, one of the last questions I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up today was, what is the most important thing that somebody should know who, well, let's just be honest, everyone's going to be a caregiver at some point and probably multiple times. Um, but being in the very different situations that you've been over the course of what, 20 years, what what's the like the number one piece of advice that you'd give somebody? I know you were just saying, ask for help. Maybe that's it, but if you want to expand on that or add to that.
Mhm. Be an advocate. I think that's right up there in the top three. Um, ask for help. I found that the control freak that I am, I really could not do everything myself. I tried, I really tried hard, but there comes a point where you're just broken and you can't. So you have to ask. Um, and just make use of those resources because they are there to help you. They know that this is a tough position. They know that you're pulling your hair out. They know that you're, scattered in 25 different directions. And they'll do everything they can to help you, narrow it down to those things that you really need and that will be most help to you. Um, it's just a crappy position to be in, but you need to get used to it because it's gonna happen. Like I said,
Hmm.
it's not if, it's a when. Um, because people are living longer, things are wearing out. Um, and it's really hard watching someone go from being a really vibrant, outgoing, do everything myself person to just being reduced to having to depend on you for everything. And it's no fun for them to have to depend on you. It's not fun for you to be that person either because you have your life and you're trying to live your life, but all of a sudden you've got four other people that are coming at you and need things. So, and five if you count my son, who thankfully, he was 7 when the whole thing happened with my husband, and kids are so resilient. It's just amazing. But the adults have issues with it because, like I said, you've been with these people their whole lives and you've seen them go from these vibrant people to just like being completely incapacitated and needing you to do everything from getting them a glass of water to having to change them. That's the worst. And that was one thing I always really struggled with when talking to people about long-term care insurance. You tell them, you say, what's going to happen when your wife has to care for you? She'll do it. Does she know
Mm,
that? Yeah, does she know that? How do you feel? How do you feel about having to change her having to change your poopy diapers? Well, that's not going to happen. Really? Go to a nursing home, go to a skilled nursing facility, and you tell me that that's not going to happen to you. How do you feel about her? All 4'11" of her helping all 5'11" of you get in and out of the shower and get your clothes on. How do you feel about that? How do you think she's going to feel about it?
Hmm.
It's a terrible conversation to have, but a lot of people are very stubborn and they just automatically think, well, my spouse will do it all, or my partner will do it all, or my kid will do it all, completely forgetting that we have lives too. So,
Hmm.
you do what you have to do, but if there's anything that's going to take some of the work off of you and put it somewhere where people are trained to deal with it can make a huge difference, believe me.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
the people who work, I think about this like teachers, right? They're just like a special kind of human, but caregivers that are like respite providers, nurses in skilled nursing facilities. I'm not even sure if the word orderly is even used anymore, but there are some
CNAs.
CNAs. I'm like, there's a word, and I'm totally dating myself. Sorry. Seen too many movies in the 80s and the 90s where they
Yeah.
use that. I can't, did they still say candy stripers?
No,
Um,
they
Oh,
don't.
that was like the 70s. I
I know that's a total throwback. But there are people in these facilities, people that come to your homes, people that do all this amazing, amazing work that step up to help take care of your loved ones when you can't do it
Yeah,
all by yourself. And
I
those are
have
special kind of
nothing.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, I have nothing but respect for the people that work every day at the facility, the skilled nursing facility that my brother's at. The things that they have to do, what they have to put up with. Um, and they do it with a smile on their face and they do it willingly and
Hmm.
they're happy to do it. I just sit there and like every time they come in, I pass in the hallway and a lot of the residents will sit in the hallway and there's one woman who always goes, excuse me, can you get me some coffee? And I go, I don't work here. I will find someone to help you. I don't want any cream or sugar in it. I just want my coffee. And I'm like going, yeah, I'll get you your coffee. So I don't even say I don't work here anymore. I go, yeah, I'll get you your coffee. And then I'll stop at the nursing station and go, they're like, she
Their
just had two
coffee.
cups. Like, just had 2 cups. She doesn't need any.
That's
But yeah,
funny.
they're a special type of person and they deserve nothing but mass respect, massive respect. Um, yeah, and
Agreed.
you
Yeah.
can never pay them enough as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be nice to the people that are taking care of your mom, man.
Uh-huh.
Like that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
It's a real thing.
Absolutely. I always bring them donuts or cookies.
There you go. Food's always a win, right? That's
Absolutely.
amazing. Well, this has been an extremely enlightening conversation. Thank you for sharing your many, many
Absolutely.
caregiving stories with us today. I think we've probably are leaving folks with little nuggets of wisdom and some great advice and some great resources that we'll be sure to put in the show notes and share. But yeah, you're a rock star, Tanya, and I don't know how you do it or
Thank
how
you.
you've been doing it, but you deserve every
Tired.
day of retirement or going to work at the library because you're restless and can't sit
That
around
sounds
in
lovely.
retirement.
That sounds
I
Um,
know
lovely.
it's like all of a sudden I don't have this job and I'm going, okay, so I've
what
read
do I
what,
do
a
now?
hundred books. I've read 100 books. I've seen all of the episodes of whatever show I'm watching on Netflix or Prime. What am I supposed to do now? It's just a weird place to be. It's just a very unsettling type of situation to be in. But as far as the caregiving goes, I'm tired.
Yeah,
You reach a point where you're just like, I'm so done with this. But you still have to get up every morning and do what you do. And it's just, like I
all
said,
right.
and you know it, you do what you have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. We appreciate
Thanks,
it, and we
everybody, too.
we hope that everyone finds it as enlightening and insightful, and you are not alone, um, folks.
You're
So,
not.
Yep.
And that was the biggest thing. One of the biggest things is realizing that, hey, you're nobody special, Tanya. This has happened to a lot of people.
mhm.
Go to them. Go to them. See what happens. And I've had a lot of people come to me and say, "Oh my God, my mother had a stroke. What do I do? What do I do? Where do I go?" So I try to help out that way. But yeah, if you could send me the information on the podcast so I know where to find it
Oh yeah,
when they're running, I would love that. That would be something new for me
absolutely.
to do. And I'd love to share it as well. So
Awesome.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Awesome. Well,
Great.
I think that's yeah, we're I think we're a wrap
Yeah.
on
Thanks, Tanya.
today.
Nice meeting you, Jeremy.
Enjoy your new job at the library. That sounds, I'm
Thank
almost
you.
jealous.
Oh.
I'm so excited. I can't wait. Be surrounded by books. Oh,
Yep.
my dream come true.
And there we go. You opened with the whole thing about caregivers being superheroes without capes. It sounds so cliche, but it is so true.
hmm
She is such a hero, this woman,
Yep.
taking care of everyone in her life in so many ways. And wow. And just the resources that she let us know about that we can let everyone else know about. Man, I really do like this podcast with every new, I like this podcast more with every new episode. But so what are our main takeaways from this one, Heather?
Oh my gosh. We the term sandwich generation has been out in like, the media, I think quite a bit for like the last I want to say even maybe 5 years or so. Because COVID, I think, honestly, is like the thing that brought this kind of caretaking from your own children to your parents, and that kind of sandwich generation came out just during, I think, COVID, or at least it drew much more light to it. It's not that it all of a sudden existed. And Tanya is certainly somebody who has been living that life and living that experience. And like you said, superheroes without capes, 100% all day long. Tanya is, we are not worthy. I mean, when you think about everything she's done, a full-time career, raising her own child, and then to take care of your spouse and then your parents. I mean, it's just, I,
And her brother.
and her brother. Yes. I mean, yeah, she checks all the boxes for
I
superhero
mean, it's
in
hard
my book.
enough when you got to take care of one person.
Hmm
She had to take care of all these people overlapping, like at different times and different ways. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and she did work in the disability insurance business within the healthcare kind of ecosystem. So, much like our other interview with Stacey Mead, another one of our human stories, again from a caretaker perspective, she had a lot of she had a lot of knowledge, but even still, she needed to depend very heavily on other people to help her kind of navigate these very different scenarios, depending on if we were talking about her mom or her dad or her brother. Long-term care facilities, disability insurance. What does Medicare cover? What does it not cover? What kind of long-term care programs are available? I mean, there's like so many options. I mean, it's dizzying um, to know where to start, right? And that's like such a common thread, I think, with a lot of our human stories. Heck, even kind of like our business interviews, because they're solving for a lot of these issues. So
Hmm.
it's overwhelming thinking about it. So
It is an overwhelming subject we're covering here on this podcast. Yeah.
yeah,
I have a hard time keeping up with us sometimes,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
But
But we can
yeah.
learn from people like Tanya, and like you said, she shared a lot of resources and I think and ideas, and we'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. But
That's what I was going to ask.
yeah,
Make sure we're going to put all those in the show
yeah. But
notes.
that's through years and years and years of like literally 2 decades um, of
Yeah.
being put in somewhat precarious situations. And anyway,
Yeah.
so we'll learn
And,
from her.
and this is just one of a few long-term care slash caregiver type episodes we're doing that will be on playlists, specifically on our YouTube page. You can find it by searching Healthcare Uprising on YouTube, and also at our Patreon at patreon.com/healthcare uprising. where you can join for as little as $1 a month and get early access to a lot of our upcoming interviews. We're usually, a good couple months ahead on our recording schedule compared to our public release. And where else are we, Heather?
You can find us online at healthcareuprising.com, and we're on all the social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. So just search Healthcare Uprising Podcast and you'll find us. And if you have a story to tell, maybe you're a CEO and founder of a healthcare startup or not so startup, but you've got a great product and you're bringing innovation to the healthcare world, or you have a human story and, well, there's a lot of humans out there and we all have stories. And you're interested in coming on the show, just shoot us an email at healthcareuprising@gmail.com, and we'd love to get you scheduled to come on and meet with us. But that's pretty much it. So that's it for this dose of Healthcare Uprising. Until next time, keep looking for the good in the world. Sometimes it's where you least expect it.
This has been a Shut Up production.
Shut up!